They swore to serve and protect the citizens of Detroit, but tonight the 7 investigators are revealing an alarming number of Detroit police officers that found themselves under arrest.
The eye-popping numbers have department watchdogs concerned right now, and tonight 7 investigator Ross Jones asks Detroit's police chief what the department is doing about them.
David Bivens grew up wanting to be a cop. That changed the night he came face to face with one.
I remember seeing him swinging from my face.
At this Meijer store on 8 Mile, off-duty Detroit police officer Lonnie Wade was working security and suspected Bivens of shoplifting. The truth is, he hadn't taken a thing, but Officer Wade didn't believe him. Within seconds, the officer could be seen hitting Bivens in the face with his baton.
Nothing but stars.
Officer Wade would give up his badge and was later charged with assault. But he is far from the only Detroit cop to face criminal charges recently. Our investigation tonight reveals that since 2016, 64 Detroit police officers have been criminally charged. The allegations, which include both on and off-duty conduct, run the gamut, from alcohol offenses to theft, assault, and drug trafficking.
That is an alarming number, and we should be concerned.
Willie Bell is a retired Detroit police officer and the chair of the Board of Police Commissioners, which oversees DPD.
That is extremely high for any department.
It was hard to find a department with numbers approaching Detroit's. In Atlanta, during the same time period, 33 officers faced charges, 17 in San Antonio, and in Dallas, too, a department with some 600 officers more than Detroit. In fact, of departments that readily track officer charges, only Baltimore, currently under federal oversight, reported more, with 76. Attorney Jeffrey Feiger has filed scores of lawsuits over police brutality. Today, he represents David Bivens.
There's no explanation that Detroit should be so far disproportionate to other cities.
When you look at those numbers, the first thing you say is the department out of control.
Chief James Craig doesn't make an excuse for any of the charges and points out that most of them were referred to prosecutors by his office. He says it means the department is holding itself accountable and stresses that these officers' alleged conduct doesn't represent the vast majority of his department.
But it does represent the alleged conduct of 64 cops, and that's not a small number.
It's not a small number. It's certainly not an excuse. Unfortunately, our officers probably face more trauma, exposed to more trauma than places I've worked.
Trauma, Craig claims, that may have triggered some of the alleged criminal behavior. 3 of the 64 officers, he says, were involved in high-profile shootings, later self-medicated with alcohol, and were charged with alcohol-related crimes.
There's a direct correlation with officers dealing with trauma and subsequent misconduct.
But trauma doesn't explain many of the 60-some other charges, like those against Officer Edward Hicks, accused of beating a man that presented no threat, then pressuring him to lie about his injuries. Or the 5 Detroit cops accused and convicted of accepting bribes from tow companies. Or for Lonnie Wade, the officer charged with beating David Bivens. He ultimately pleaded no contest and was sentenced to probation.
Did anybody ever apologize to you?
No.
Still to this day?
Yes.
They're real bad at apologizing. I have yet to have a police case in which the police who have been accused of wrongdoing apologize.
Well, some of the 64 officers have pleaded or been found guilty over the last 3 years. A good number of them are still waiting for their day in court and maintain the presumption of innocence.
Wow, so it sounds like the chief is saying in a way, this could be, I don't know, good news that they're stepping up and taking
in a way,
account for their own officers?
That this shows that the department is capable of and is policing itself. I think the question is how much of this is a culture that roots out bad apples and how much of this is having bad apples to be rooted out. I think that's really the question.
Let's get rid of the bad apples, I guess.
He would be the first to say that.
You're right about that, because he does try and make change in Detroit. Thank you so much, Ross.